I just returned from the best trip of my life. It was only 2 days long, but it was an honor flight trip from Dallas Fort Worth area where I live to Washington D.C. to see the World War II and Korean monuments, and while we were there we also saw the Marine Corps statue of raising the flag on Suribachi, the Navy monument, the Air Force monument, Seabees. Every branch of service and every unit has some kind of remembrance there. They haven't gotten into the Vietnam War veterans yet, but the World War II and Korean are disappearing very rapidly. This is an organization that takes veterans free of charge of any sort to Washington for 1 or 2 days, depending on where they are from and how long the travel was and all of that. They operate strictly and totally on donations, and not a soul involved with it is paid. They are all volunteers, and they even pay their own way, which is airfare and hotel bills and stuff like that to go along. But the veterans pay absolutely nothing. And each veteran is issued or assigned a guardian or butler, whichever you want to call it, who is personally responsible for them for the trip. And from the time that I met my guardian, which is a lovely young lady, youngest looking grandmother I ever saw, at the airport at Love Field. She was my constant companion everywhere I went on the trip, on the bus rides, and at the various monuments. And I couldn't really walk as far as it was going to be necessary, so they assigned me a wheelchair, and she pushed me in a wheelchair. But it was a great trip. And if you're thinking about donating money to various causes, and especially something involving the veterans, you should look up honor flights, because what they do is well worth whatever donation you'd like to make. And in fact, if you want to, you can volunteer to be one of the assistants on there. But as I say, you do have to pay your own way. This video is of the first day. I made another one which will be of the second day, and you can see it later.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, in honor of all those folks who are on this flight who served, we appreciate your service, and this salutes to you.
It's more impressive on the outside.
It's raining here.
This is Washington, D.C. We just got off the airplane waiting for a bus now. Would have to be raining today. It's really coming right on down.
Right here. Can you go behind me? Because you're in the way. Oh, that's cool.
Really something, aren't they?
Yeah,
Those are representatives, supposedly, of all the United Nations forces
Yeah.
that fought in Korea. And you can see with the their own eternal patrol,
yeah,
and you see the capes that they have.
yeah,
Supposedly, that's the misery of like the Chosin Reservoir
yeah,
and fighting in the mountains of North Korea. But you can just see the fatigue in their faces and the hopelessness. And you can see that the soldier straight through there, looking back,
yeah,
barking at his men to
Yeah.
hurry up.
yeah.
Yeah. And here's one right here. He's got a BAR, Browning automatic
Yeah.
rifle. And he looks like he's African American gentleman.
Yeah,
This one right here, he's got he's covering up his rifle, I guess.
yeah,
And the Korean government every day puts out a wreath right here. See right here to the right?
yeah.
There's a lot of MASH.
You know, there really was only one song associated with Korea, and that was Tokyo Shoeshine Boy.
My shoes have one.
You heard it everywhere.
Hey y'all. This is Dan.
And this is our dinner group here tonight.
It's my Uncle Homer Lee, and this is my dad, always travels with me.
How about that? It's nice. And this is my
My
guardian.
dad wasn't able to go, so also in the Philippines.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have an interesting story. He went in the summer of 25. My dad was a former military police On his way to Schofield Barracks in Hawaii, which is absolutely a beautiful place if you ever go there, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor and they actually hit Schofield Barracks. His troop ship turned around and went back to San Francisco for 2 weeks. Later, Homer Lee Crew trained at Schofield Barracks with the 25th Infantry Division. Later, they went to Guadalcanal. After the Marines took Guadalcanal, the 25th Infantry Division had to go into the hills and mountains of Guadalcanal to clean out the Japanese. Later, he served on the island of New Georgia, which is also on the Solomon Island chain. Homer Lee then went to New Zealand, and they trained for the invasion of the Philippines. In January of 1945, the 25th Infantry Division landed on the island of Luzon. They fought their way up into the mountains, and they came to a place called Malady Pass, which in the 25th Infantry Division history is like, you go to their museum and it's got just a great history of that battle. But what's interesting is my dad had a cousin, John Pickens, who was a lieutenant in the 1st Cavalry Division. Later became, and during Vietnam, the 1st Air Cavalry Division. Well, Lieutenant Pickens knew that his cousin, Homer Lee Crew, was up in the mountains. Well, he heard they had come down out of the mountains and were bivouacked somewhere up in the mountains. So he grabbed a Jeep. He found where they were kind of R&R, I guess you would say. So he got up into this area, and he said it was like 120 degrees. He said flies, mosquitoes, everything was buzzing and buzzing. Went to a sergeant, and he says, "Do you know where this one company is?" He says, "Yeah, I think it's up on the hill." So he said he wrote me a letter years ago, Lieutenant Pickens, and said he went up into this area, and he said he walked into this campground, and there were tents everywhere, and everybody was asleep. Everybody was exhausted, worn out, because they had just came out of the mountains. So he went to each tent and he whispered, "Homer Lee Crew, are you there? Homer Lee Crew, Homer Lee Crew." Nobody said anything. So he turned around and walked off. He says, "Well, they must not be here." All of a sudden behind him, he said, "Is somebody looking for Homer Lee Crew?" Lieutenant Pickens turned around and he says, "Yeah, I'm looking for Homer Lee Crew. He's my cousin." And Homer Lee said, "John, it's me." And Homer Lee had been, like I said, Guadalcanal, New Georgia. All those guys had been eaten up with beriberi, malaria, dengue fever. Everybody had, and Homer Lee had lost maybe 50, 60, 70 pounds. He immediately started crying. And one of the things that John Pickens remembers him saying is, "I thought everybody forgot me." Because my family had so many boys in the military, and they were farmers up in Arkansas. They weren't big letter writers. And he entered the Army. I'm sure he had a girlfriend or two, but he certainly wasn't married. So I always remembered that Homer Lee said, "I thought everybody forgot me." Well, John Pickens, his cousin, and him went over and, quote, sat under a tree for 2 hours and talked about home. Well, anyway, John said, "I'm down in the headquarters area." He says, "But 2 weeks, when you come back out of the mountains, I'll come see you again." And Homer Lee said, "Okay, that'd be great." Well, sure enough, in 2 weeks, Lieutenant Pickens goes back up into this area. When he got there, looking for Homer Lee Crew, and they said he'd been mortally wounded at the Battle of Malady Pass. He'd been hit in the shoulder by a Japanese sniper. He lived about 3 days and died. In 1947, I've got paperwork where my grandfather wrote the War Department asking for his son's body to be brought back from the Philippines. My dad was in the Philippines in the summer of 1945 and actually went to his grave. In the letter to the War Department, it cost my grandfather $25 to have his own son's body shipped back. And when he got back, the researcher that did this work for me said that when his body was delivered to the funeral home in Leechville, Arkansas, the only thing he had was a waterlogged Bible and some New Zealand coins. And the researcher said, even for a soldier in the South Pacific, that was just nothing to be shipped back. So we think it probably been pilfered or something like that. One of the reasons I do Honor Flight is for Homer Lee Crew. And this flag was a 48-star flag that was on his casket when he died. That flag, as far as I know, has been folded in that way for the past 70 some odd years, and I have it in a case at home. So I appreciate Honor Flight giving me the opportunity to tell Homer Lee that he's not forgotten. So thank you very much.
Jim Foreman, Army.